Psych 100 students, are you ready for Chapter 12, Social Psychology? By the way, if you happen to like this particular chapter, I advise you to take our social psychology class either through our sociology department or our psychology department, depending on which semester it's being taught. And I think you'll really love it because it's a full semester of just this chapter. Now, I am biased towards this chapter because when I was in college, my major was psychology, of course. My minor was sociology. And so you put them together, you got chapter 12. When I applied for my teaching job at Santa Ana College, they asked, would I be able to teach social psychology because they had it on the shelf and nobody was teaching it. And I said, I'm your man because I had taught it before. We're into social distancing these days, and here's a person who has their own personal space, right? Maybe we'll come to that. Usually little barriers of that nature. And this is kind of a norm for us anyways, right? You're in a pretty much empty movie theater. You sit down and the movie's going to start in a minute or so, and in comes another customer, and they have 150 seats to choose, but they sit right next to you. You might feel a little weird because it kind of feels like they're invading your personal space. So you might get up and go use the restroom and then come back and sit in a different chair, right? We go to a library and what do? We sit at a table and we put all our papers all around us. We give the message to people, this is our space. Even though we don't need this much space, this is our space, right? This is social psychology. I do have to start it off with kind of a sad case study. And the name of the case study is called Kitty. Her real name was Catherine Genovese. Here's an image of Catherine Genovese. She lived in New York City, also known as the Big Apple. And she lived approximately in these apartments in this building right here. What happened on that night in 1964 was she had worked at a bar and was coming home, and it was after 2 in the morning, and she was approached by this man. His name is Winston Mosley. Right? Her spidey senses went off, and she immediately felt that something wasn't quite right, and so she started running. Mr. Mosley unfortunately ran faster than she did and started stabbing her repeatedly. Now, Kitty was not a quiet victim. When she collapsed initially by this awning here, she was screaming at the top of her lungs. Now, it's after 2 in the morning, so there are a lot of people asleep, but some people, we believe, heard her. Initially, we thought it was 30-plus people. Now we think it was probably closer to 20-something people that either saw or heard or believed that something was going on. And the most anybody did when hearing her screams was open up a window and say, hey, leave her alone. Right? This was enough for Mr. Mosley to leave the scene. He did not want to be apprehended, so he leaves the scene. And as he's leaving, he turns around and he notices there's no police, there's no ambulance, there's no mob of people coming to her aid. So he makes a conscious decision. I'm going to go move my car so I won't be identified. Nobody will get my license plate. I'll come back and I'll wear a disguise, put a hat on, and I'll come back and finish Kitty. So he returns, and Kitty's lost a lot of blood. She manages to crawl into a little hallway, a little foyer, not able to get to her apartment, and he proceeds to finish her off, so to speak. Horrible, horrible case. It hit the newspapers. And the message was, people are so insensitive, right? They heard this thing going on and nobody did anything to help. And so we came up with what is known as the bystander effect. It's also known as diffusion of responsibility. It's also known as bystander apathy. It has a very weird correlation. It says as the number of people increase, the chance of us getting help actually decreases. that doesn't make that much sense to me because I would think it would be the complete opposite, that the more people, the more help, you would think. That wasn't the case. So the researchers looked into this, and what they found was that some people did come to Kitty's aid, right, while her assailant was relatively close by. But we have a number of instances where people have the time to videotape something, maybe send it through social media, but not take the time to call the police. I don't expect everybody to be a superhero, right? It's difficult to just don the mask, so to speak, and take action, right? Not everybody can do that, and I wouldn't expect everybody to do that, but just make a call. Right? So what the researchers found was that there are a number of factors involved, right? Increase the number of people who witness something, decrease the help. If you're the kind of person that's in a hurry, you're less likely to help. If the victim is somehow, you could relate to the victim in somehow, or if you believe that the victim actually needs help. Some people couldn't relate to Kitty. They even make the assumption that she was having a fight with her boyfriend, or maybe even was a prostitute and didn't deserve the help that she needed. Your mood can also determine whether you help somebody. Better the mood, the more likely to help. If you're not too preoccupied with stuff, most of us are so preoccupied with stuff that we don't even notice things. So a lot of various things. The researchers said if you, let's say you're in a crowded city street and you fall and maybe you break your ankle, you're not sure, and you see a crowd of people just observing you, right? Some of them maybe even filming to see what happens. Point out somebody very specific, right? Hey, you with the cape on, can you please call 911? Okay, so what I've just done is I specified a person, not just yelling out, somebody call 911, because everybody will assume somebody else will do that. And I gave him something very direct to do, as opposed to, you help me. The person may not know what to do, right? They may not be a medical professional. So calling for help, that's okay to do, right? Now, we learned a lot about this case from Winston Moseley himself. He was eventually caught breaking and entering, and while in custody, he confessed to this murder and another murder. And his situation has changed over the years. He initially confessed, was put in prison, broke out of prison, raped another woman while he was out of prison, put back into prison, and then he said that no, he never did anything to Kitty, that he just drove a stranger there, and the stranger is the one that killed him or killed her. He did later admit that he did kill Kitty, but that was only after she yelled racial names at him. There doesn't seem to be any evidence to his news stories. There seems to be some evidence that he actually did kill Kitty. We don't have to worry about Mr. Moseley anymore because he died in prison. There's an interesting documentary, if you get a chance, done by Kitty's younger brother called The Witness that explores this issue and kind of challenges the notion that nobody cared for Kitty, because people did care for her. She was well loved, right? So that's a sad case of Kitty Genovese. Take a look at these images that are very relevant today, right? This is a picture I took just the other day, August of 2002, of a collage that represented the Japanese internment experience. Here's some pictures I took at the Detroit, one of the Detroit local museums. Perhaps it was the Henry Ford Museum. I don't recall the exact location. But this is our history of our country, where we decided that only certain people can drink from certain water fountains, right? Certain people had privilege. This is what social psychologists are interested in, exploring these issues. Here's a picture I took just the other day of people protesting against the Nazis and the Ku Klux Klan. Now, you would swear that this might have been taken last week, but what's different about this picture is it was taken March 20th of 1982 in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I attended this protest and I took this snapshot, and you would swear that the same things are going on today. This ties into the issues of prejudice and discrimination. Prejudice is just an attitude. All right, we grow up with a lot of prejudicial attitudes. You ask a kid, what don't you like? And they'll say, vegetables. And you'll ask them, well, have you tried all of them? And they're like, no, I just tried cauliflower. It's gross. Well, how do you know you hate all vegetables, right? That's just one. It has a very particular flavor to it. Discrimination is action based on that attitude. And so you have a person who walks around thinking to themselves, I don't like college students, I don't like college professors, I don't like college. But they hire you and you get to work for them. Or they don't hire you because they find out you're a college student. So, first example where they don't like college students, they're kind of generalizing to all college students. Maybe they had one bad experience with one college student. That's a prejudicial attitude. Discrimination is when they don't hire you. And some people never admit to their prejudices, but they discriminate freely. And they just deny, I'm not a prejudicial person, right? Stereotypes can lead to prejudicial attitudes. We all have certain stereotypes of what things are like and what things are not like. We grow up with certain stereotypes. We see it in the media portrayed over and over and over again. And so we just have it embedded into us. I remember being part of a dance troupe in college, and I was representing the Veracruz region of Mexico as far as the dance performance to an elementary school in Detroit. And I proceeded to do the dance. And the little kids, they came up to me, very innocent, very young kids, and they said, did you ride a donkey to get to our school? Do you guys have TV? They assumed I had come from Mexico to do this dance. And I said, I just came down from up the street. I live in Detroit too. I had to kind of educate them a little bit because they were innocent. They just grew up with certain images of what Mexico was like. And that's kind of how we develop stereotypes. If nothing changes our opinion, we get set in stone. Let me ask you this. When I say Canada, what comes to mind, right? What sports are those folks into? What food products are they into? Well, if you thought hockey, you're right. Those folks do love their hockey. But you know what? They love baseball too. If you thought syrup, they're into syrup. Well, yeah, they like syrup just like anybody else, right? For the most part. So it's our choice if we keep these stereotypes or let go of them. I always advise people to travel as much as possible so you can see for yourself. We'll continue with Chapter 12, Social Psychology, next time.